Hi, I'm Riyaaz Safi, and welcome to Thinking Out Loud. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, and Apple Podcast, and in that way, you'll never miss another episode. So, in today's episode, we collaborate for the first time with one of South Africa's most talented comedians and also the host of the award-winning podcast, Lesser Known Somebodies. Hey, Simmi Areff, and welcome to Thinking Out Loud.
What up, my G? How are you?
Oh, good. So excited to have you on the show.
You don't sound excited. I just want to say that you don't. There was not much fanfare. If this was a proper thing, there would be proper sounds. It'd be like, "Welcome, Simmi Areff," kind of stuff like
that. Welcome, Simmi Areff. Okay, I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
So the question that's been on the top of my mind, from a comedian to a podcast host, how and why did this change happen?
It's not a change. I'm still a comedian. I didn't stop. A lot of people have asked me, why have you gone from comedian to podcaster? It's the same thing. I'm still funny. I haven't left one job and gone to another one. It's not like a career change. It's just another skill that I have.
And what made you want to start podcasting?
Because I couldn't get on air at my favorite radio station, 947. So I was like, I'll show you guys. I will now just become a big time podcaster. That's literally what happened. Wow. And then I had my recording equipment because I always dug podcasts. Like I think I was listening to podcasts like 2012 already. Like it was a cool thing to do. Like I listened to a lot of my comedian heroes on podcasts, and so I wanted to do my own stuff. And I was already doing like stuff when I'd go to the cricket. I'd record audio of me like speaking to fans stuff. So I already knew what to do, and because radio had also helped me out of how to edit audio, what to ask, etc. It just felt like another cool thing to do, like as well as being a comedian. So yeah.
Do you still have aspirations of being on radio?
Yeah, as soon as somebody can offer me a radio gig, I'll stop my podcast. Straight up. Because then there's no point of doing the podcast. The only reason I did this podcast was to get back on radio. Once I get a radio gig, the podcast is over.
We wish you all the best in those endeavors. So,
thank you.
No problem. What are some of the challenges that you faced when trying to set up this podcast?
I don't know. What are your challenges?
I had many. I must be honest. I was a radio presenter. As you can see, I'm still trying to work on that. So,
what radio station?
It was a community-based radio station in Lenasia called East Wave Radio. So
I know East Wave. Yeah, dope. Yeah.
So we used to play like songs. So if there was nothing to say, I'd quickly get into a song. And here we are having a chat, and you obviously have your guest on with you. And some of the challenges I had was, I wasn't too sure with the recording part. I'm not very good in terms of the technical aspects.
What do you use to record?
Well, I use my Mac and Zoom, of course, and my mic.
What Zoom do you have? Oh, you're talking about Zoom, the application?
Yeah.
Yeah. What microphone do you have?
Samsung.
Ah, Samsung. Oh, that's a pretty good mic. I think technical gear is always an immediate challenge, because the better gear you have, the better your audio sounds. And I tell a lot of people that audio is a lot more difficult to record than like visual. So I always give the same example, like on almost every single radio podcast, any talk or panel discussion that I'm on, I always tell people that recording audio is tougher than recording visual, because you'll watch a YouTube video that has bad visuals but great audio. But if you had a very good visual video and horrible audio, you'll switch off. Your mind switches off. Audio is that important. That's why, like, even in movies, audio costs a lot of money to get things right. So it's good that you have equipment. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was one of my challenges. I always had a Zoom H4n, which is my first piece of audio equipment. And that thing, I could plug 2 microphones in. I could record on the go. It was very simple. And back then, I'm also one of those like tech savvy type of people. So I wouldn't necessarily need my computer to edit audio. Like I would download something on my phone and use that and have my jingle, go into the interview, put an outro on, and I'll be sorted. Then I could still export that to my MacBook and Bluetooth it, etc., etc. So I don't think I had many challenges. I think the only challenge, but every podcaster has this challenge, is making money from this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably it. That's probably like the biggest challenge, because I can record anywhere and I'm comfortable enough to speak to anyone and have a decent conversation, at least something that is least gripping for like 30 to 40 minutes before a listener goes off. And yeah, I think because I don't think like there's a massive challenge in the sense of recording podcasts for me personally. I think the challenge is earning, but I think that's a global challenge when it comes to podcasts.
But now, my next question was around that in terms of now that you've won many accolades in terms of your podcast that you've been doing, the Lesser Known Somebodies.
Yes.
I guess it's an opportunity for you to earn some money. Am I?
Well,
correct?
I've earned money from my podcast. I licensed it to Prime Media for a year.
Yes.
I've done other small sponsorships with it, but these things aren't sustainable. Like they're not sustainable. They're not like a Joe Rogan $240 million podcasting contract. But then, so they're not sustainable. But you could find like advertisers that are willing to like promote on your podcast and stuff. And you can do a trade exchange or whatever. But I mean, like, I'm not really concerned about how much money I make from it. It's a challenge, of course, but I'm just like, I do other things that earn me money.
Certainly. Where do you see podcast in the next year or two? In terms of your podcast, where do you see it going in the next year or two?
My podcast would definitely get visuals on. As soon as the numbers of coronavirus have died down, enough vaccinated people, we'll go back into studio, change it to a bit of a video setup so we can start doing video podcasts. I need YouTube views. That's it. That's basically what I'll do. That's my next step.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because I was doing some research and they said the future of podcast is going to be visual. So that's something I guess you need to prepare yourself.
Yeah, they say that, but I think they're also wrong in that. I mean, like, I think it will be visual inside a podcast app. I don't think it'll be like I go to YouTube to listen to Simmi's podcast. I think Spotify have been doing it recently with Joe Rogan Experience. So you can watch the video, and then as soon as you go out of the app, it continues with the audio. And I think that's where it's going to.
Talking about challenges that you spoke about earlier. Now, I started this last year in November, so it's not been a very long time that I've been doing this. I've recorded 7 shows, and now this is it.
And you're on season 2.
Yes. we keep it short.
whenever I see podcasts that have like, season 1 and season 2, and then I'm just like, what defines a season? when you just got tired and you stopped recording for a little bit, then you're just like, okay, that's the end of season 1.
Well, we have a theme that we run. So the last season.
Oh, so it's themes, yeah. Okay. What was the theme for the first season?
So the first season we had money, where we spoke to a financial journalist. We then spoke about mental health as well. So it was a theme around wellness, looking after your finances during the COVID times, and then also giving back. So we've also had someone sharing an inspirational story in terms of the work that they do within the community. And then
what's the full-time job that you hold?
I work in the financial services industry.
Why don't you offer them to do podcasts?
Something to think about, yeah. Certainly. I'm going to look into that further.
And did you go for vocal training, like radio training?
Yes, when I stayed in the UK, I did do that.
You stayed in the UK. Why do you not share all these great stories? Why are you asking me questions about what are your challenges? You've got such a cool story. So you came from the UK and then you went to Lenasia.
No. It was a story from Lenasia to London.
Lenasia to London. How long were you in London for?
I was there for about 3 years. I went on those working holiday visas.
Oh, lacquer. But this can't be your real voice then?
What do you mean this can't be my real voice?
You came from Lenasia, you went to London, but you sounded like, because a human being at the age of 8 already has a definite accent to the way they speak, the way they pronounce 8 words and stuff.
Yes.
So were you speaking like this when you were 8? Like a radio DJ?
Well, no, that came with in terms of
So that's
when
what
I
I'm
was
saying.
training.
Then that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
The way you sounded to me, you were just like, yeah. Well, what's wrong with the way I speak? There's nothing wrong with the way you speak. I want to know, do you speak like this when you're off the microphone?
Um, I would think most cases, but or maybe when I do interviews, you have a
Yeah,
certain
that's
way
that's
of.
wild. Do you know Derek Alberts?
I've heard of it.
Derek
Yeah.
Alberts he was a sports journal. I don't know if he's still at EWN, but
Is
Derek
he?
Alberts speaks like this, like, this is Derek Alberts reporting live from the Dakar Racing. And then I always used to wonder, would Derek speak like that to his wife? What are we having for supper tonight? It's me, Derek Alberts. And I was just like, it can't be. That's why I always get fascinated when I hear good voices. Like, there must be a crack. Like, I don't have a great speaking voice. I have a good sounding voice. It's sultry, it's sexy. But the voice that I'm using now on this thing,
Yes.
when I go speak to my mother downstairs, is the exact same thing.
Fantastic. I'm lost for
Shook
words. I'm lost for words.
No, don't be lost for words. I just want to know, when you were a small little Riyaaz,
Yes.
and then you went to England, and then you were there, and then someone said, wow, you've got a very nice voice, you should go for vocal training. What did did she change you? Can you go backwards?
No, to be honest, I think it was before that because when I was in school, I was a very shy person. Let me give you the story. I still am a bit of an introvert. But what happened is one day at school, we actually had a play. And my teacher told me that I have confidence, you can do this. And I was extremely nervous. I actually used to shiver when I used to go on stage. That's how nervous I was. And yeah, I went, and he told me, if the crowd makes a noise, you just go up to them and tell them they need to respect artists and they need to listen. And obviously none of this happened. Everyone was listening.
Whoever told you that was right, though?
Well, my teacher, he just passed away last year of COVID, Mr. Judge Bai. So, yeah, it was very sad.
R.I.P.
What then happened is, obviously, none of this happened. No one said nothing. They were listening to us attentively. And I was so nervous. I went back on stage and I said, you guys need to listen to us. And yeah, I'm giving a speech. And that was like a moment when it happened. And then I was like, after that, a few years later, I joined the radio station. And that's where I basically learned by listening to others and back announcing songs, on Indian radio stations. You then talk to interesting people like Priyanka Chopra, Shah Rukh Khan, and all that people. So yeah, over the years I've learned that. And then when I went to the UK, I did a course with the London Academy of Radio and Television. Yeah.
You see, when I always listen to podcasts, the thing I must always emphasize is that the only thing that makes a podcast interesting is the host or hosts, depending how many you have. And it's just like the only thing that makes people interesting are stories. So like when you interview me, especially on podcasts, if it was radio, it's probably a bit different. I would take every single question and give an appropriate answer. But I mean, like, I like hearing stories because if I'm not attached to the guest, the host, or I don't feel like they entertain me, I just stop. I stop listening.
I understand.
And you've got stories, so you must always share a good story with us. Like, I didn't know that's the reason where you learned how to go, where you learned how to speak. That's a cool story. I don't know that you came from Lens and you went to Britain and you're there at the London Academy of Radio and Television.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, coming back to challenges, and there's another story in terms of podcasts and in South African context. So after I started the podcast in November, obviously I was advertising it on various social media platforms, etc. And I once went to the mall about in December. It is Lens Mall after all, so I know you can see
Trade route. Did you go to trade route?
Yes. And then what happened is I bumped into one of these gentlemen that always listens, and he told me, hey, I see your post and I like it and everything, but what exactly are you doing? What's a podcast?
I leave those people. Leave those people.
I was like,
leave those people.
Sure. How do we reach levels that they have in the US? in
We
terms of
won't. It's
listenerships?
as simple as that. No, it's as simple as that. We won't. We won't ever. We don't have a market that can ever handle that. You must have data or internet to listen to a podcast, and data is expensive in our country. Buying data is expensive in the country as well. So you won't get to those levels. Your podcast would have to appeal to people outside of South Africa, maybe, to get to those levels. They would have to appeal to a North American market. Anywhere else, people struggle with podcast numbers and podcast downloads, except specifically in North America. They know how to do it, not because they know the skills. I mean, the skill of recording something and telling a story can be done anywhere in the world, but they have enough people consuming in that market to get substantial numbers if the content is good. So we're not going to get there. So if this was like your dream and you were hoping to get like a million downloads an episode, leave that dream. Go focus on something else. It's not going to happen.
No,
Unless
absolutely.
you get picked up overseas and someone's like, yo, there's a podcast from South Africa done by this Riyaaz guy and this thing is popping. Then you'll get those numbers.
With you. Got that. Now, you must have had some interesting stories around guests that you featured. What was possibly one of the highlights while recording your podcast? Any guests or any stories around that you'd like to share with us?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I mean, I think every guest is cool to a certain extent. I guess the moments that I have on the podcast are also fun and lighthearted. Sometimes a DMC. I don't have a story that sticks where I'm just like, I can't believe this person said this thing. I don't. You must understand, for me, I just like hearing stories and telling stories. So if I tell a story with a guest or I tell a story with a friend and I press record, I enjoy that moment the most. So I can't even choose like a favorite podcast. I can't, because I'm just like, I enjoy speaking to different people all the time. I enjoy details and stories. That's what makes me a very good podcaster.
Amazing. Something I need to pick up on. Now, moving on to your journey as a comedian.
Yes.
How did that happen? Give us the story behind that.
I like telling jokes. And
Yes.
when I was in university, I went to a comedy night and I saw people tell jokes. And then when I went back to campus, like the following week, they had an open mic night. And I told jokes there. And then there was a comedian there who ran the Durban comedy scene. And then he booked me for more gigs. And the next thing I know, I was paying for my bills via comedy. So that's how it started. I always tell people that it doesn't really matter how you start comedy. You would have landed up there anyway. Whether it was that moment I decided comedy, whether it was 3 years later, at some point I would have tried stand-up comedy.
It was meant for you, yeah. So that's where you ended up being.
And I actually don't know if it was meant for me. It's not a job that when I was growing up I wanted. I didn't go like, oh shit, I can't wait to be this
what did you want to be?
rich.
Yes.
I don't know. I think I changed over time. I think I would have liked, I got a BA LLB, right? But I don't like practice law.
Oh wow.
I think I would have liked to have been a writer or study history, be a historian. I like reading a lot, so anything that would have involved reading and writing, I think I would have done very well at.
You still have, so I can imagine in the future we're gonna expect a book from you, possibly.
Maybe a poetry book, but no book.
So no tell it all.
There's nothing much to tell.
No, please.
I always find it weird with books in South Africa because it's a lot of effort for minimal reward. So I'm just like, you won't make more than like maybe 200,000 Rand from your book. But that's spread over like a 24-month period, and 6 grand going into your bank account every month doesn't seem like riches and glory, Yeah.
Now, what I really like about a lot of your comedies, and something that I've noticed about you, talk a lot about love. And you've said several times that it comes from
themes.
Experience.
Yes.
Heartbroken.
Yes. I mean, I think everybody has heartbreak. I don't think I've got the license on heartbreak. I just know that there's incredible funny stories in all relationships, specifically lovey-dovey romantic relationships. So I wouldn't say it's like the only theme I touch on. Just in the last few years, I've touched on it because that's the show that I wrote specifically around heartbreak, and I haven't gotten to tour it long enough. So now I've like last year I toured it and the year before, but I still want to do it more and more because it's a good show. I like the jokes that I've written for that show. So I want to do it more and more and more and more. So you keep on doing radio interviews and they do a quick Google of you and they see like, oh, this is the love doctor. Then I'm just like, I'm not a love doctor. I'm just a very good storyteller.
But that would have helped you get a job on 94.7 by now.
No, I'll never get a job in 94.7. Don't worry about that. Those days are over. There'll be other radio stations that come. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Now, what I'm really loving in terms of your interaction that you're doing on Instagram, Agony Areff.
Yeah.
Wow. I must be honest with you. It's a good time pass.
I won't lie. I did that because I wanted to make money. And I just generally I just have fake sponsors. And then Game came to me and they were just like, we want to sponsor 3 weeks of this stuff. And I was just like, lol, these guys fell hook, line, and sinker into my trap. I basically catfished a sponsorship. That's what I did. But yeah, I dig it. People send funny stories or questions in and I get to answer them in a funny, nonchalant way. But I always tell people, don't listen to that advice. It's very bad advice. But it's the exact type of advice you'd expect off Instagram.
Not the best advice. What is the weirdest question that you had to deal with there? If you think about
that thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a weird question, but there was a girl that would ask questions all the time and always throw hints to being married and her husband's from the UAE and he doesn't understand English very well and she stays in Kuwait, etc., etc. And then one day she said these answers are making me laugh so much because I'm going through my divorce. And then I was like, aren't you the girl that said that you were married to a guy from Kuwait, etc., etc.? She's like, yes. And I found that so shocking because in like a 3-month period, she went from lovey-dovey stuff to I'm heartbroken and I'm divorced now. And these things make me laugh. And I was like, whoa, Nelly. Because she used to respond with like to questions and answers with, I just showed my husband this and translated it for him. He's laughing so hard. I just thought that was a weird like circle of a story.
Yeah, absolutely weird indeed.
Why do you do the radio thing when after a guest has answered a question?
You mean the comments?
Yeah, the comment. It's like radio people always do that. Like, why do people do that?
It gives us a moment to pause and think about where to go.
If I said it's hot outside, you'd be like, it's very hot outside. Do you know the other day? Then you'd be like, hey, my man, no conversation works like that. It's like, I'm going to try it to you. Next question you ask me, I'm going to do it to you. Because it's just a very weird way to converse.
Point taken.
You see.
You're putting me on the spot.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so getting back to Agony Areff. So we spoke about what the weirdest question that you've done. Where do you see this going? Is it just something that you do while you during the lockdown in terms of entertainment and obviously?
I don't see it going anywhere. It's just the thing I do on Thursdays. As soon as I probably have something else to do, I'll probably stop. I think where people, some people take my creativity way more seriously than I do. If that makes sense.
I understand, yeah.
So I did this panel discussion the other day where people were speaking to me about podcasting in Africa. Mm-hmm. And I just sit back and think for a second and go, I tell jokes for a living. I just happen to have a pretty cool podcast that's pretty successful.
Yes.
So when people are like, oh, the monetization of podcasts in Africa, and I tell them, I don't know, and I don't particularly care because I'm just like, if money comes my way, great. If it doesn't, I'll do something else. So even with like Agony Areff to a certain extent, Main reason why I'm consistent with it is because I'm home on a Thursday. But I tell you, once I'm vaccinated and I can see the outside world more and more consistently, hey guys, that thing will be in your dreams. It's never coming back.
But I must be honest with you, as someone that follows this, I love it. It's actually very, very entertaining.
I know, and thank you. I don't want you to not think that I won't do it again. I'm just like, I've got to find other things that also entertain me. Because sometimes as a creative, we always forget that it's nice entertaining people, but I also want to be entertained. I want to do something that makes me go, oh yeah, cool. I get to create this thing. And that initially was with Agony Areff. I did have that. And then now on a Thursday, sometimes I don't get people saying like rude things. Not like rude to me, just like, yo, I want to have my wife and a girl and another person and have a threesome. What should I do? How do I say it? I'm just like, yo, this is, now you're just crude. I don't want that. That's not where my creativity exists.
No, I'm with you 100%. I've read some of those comments and I felt just as...
they're wild.
I was like,
they're
would I have
wilding.
dealt with that possibly?
Yeah.
Oh, perhaps
they're wilding. Sometimes you get people like, it's like someone said, I will drive to you now and give you the best of your life. And I'm just like, Hamuna, in a pandemic. How and why are you so brave to say this to me? What if I was married? What would I respond to that with? You can't. It's tough. People are problems, Riyaaz. That's the thing.
Problems indeed. Now, the COVID has been quite a challenge for many people in the entertainment industry. You obviously have done your podcast. You've been doing Agony Areff. Where do you see things after post-COVID? How do you see things changing within this industry? Because it's going to be quite...
Every artist that was struggling,
yes,
every artist that was struggling should have a 9 to 5 by now. This thing was not for you. That's what COVID did. COVID showed us who real artists are. An artist can create whether they're at home or they're on stage. But every single time I see like a new comedian jump on stage and now they call themselves comedians and they do things. COVID will show you. If you weren't being booked during COVID, you're not good. It's as simple as that. You aren't good. And if you aren't good, you can't expect to be a professional and be paid for these things. If you were paid, you know you're on the right career path. But other than that, I want to see guys get more 9 to 5s and contribute to the GDP of the country.
Okay, harsh indeed.
I don't know if it's harsh. It's realistic.
Of course.
It's very realistic. There's I don't like shitting on people's dreams. People's dreams are to be comedians or radio DJs, etc., etc. You have to be substantially good to be those things.
Of course.
Because if you aren't, then you're just playing around. I don't want to be a rugby player. So I don't act like I am a rugby player. I don't want to be a cricketer. I don't act like I want to be a cricketer. But if people seem to be in the arts, they want to be singers. They want to be media personalities. They want to be comedians. But they are really medium beige and mediocre at the craft itself.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's easy to say those things. You tell a joke at a braai and your friends are like, hey, go on stage. You go on stage once and you consider yourself a comedian. There's no you have to go to university to become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. But with comedy, you only have to have the experience once and you could call yourself that. That's a crazy job profile. That's wild. You have to sing a song once at karaoke and you can consider yourself a singer.
Yeah.
You can go to a wedding. You can go to a wedding and sing an Indian song. And people will be like, yo, this guy, he does weddings. They would never do that. They would never do that to a lawyer. You don't see people calling themselves lawyers. And when you do, people take them to the Legal Council of South Africa to say these people aren't lawyers.
So what you're saying, there's a lot of people with, fly-by-nights. That's the
yeah,
word
but
that comes to
not
mind.
fly-by-nights. Yeah, fly-by-nights to a certain extent. But I'm saying it's easy to say you're a comedian.
Is it not?
It is.
Yeah. Is it not also because of the fact that there's the people associate the glamour with it, the money apparently that comes with it, and that's the arts industry as a whole, because there's lots of people I've come across as well that will tell you, oh, I can do this and I can do that. But when it comes to delivering, they can't do any of it.
Maybe South African artists need to realize that they're actually not that good. It's as simple as that. Like, I know it sounds harsh, but I'm just like, maybe some singers must realize they're not good at singing. Maybe some comedians must realize they're not good at comedian. Maybe like poets must realize they're not that good at poets. There's so many things you can realize. Why do you want to put yourself through the struggles? That's why I'm saying, like, the biggest challenge of COVID-19 isn't necessarily a challenge. Is if you survived it, doing the thing that you say you do. I do stand-up comedy. I'm safe. As soon as this COVID is over, I can still do stand-up comedy. But there's some people they say they're comedians, but they haven't done anything for a year and a half. Go get a 9 to 5, guys. This thing is tough. You can't build a family by being a comedian. You can't buy a house by doing club gigs.
Yeah.
Guys must stop it. You're spoiling your life. Go out, earn money. There's nothing wrong with having a job. You can do comedy as a hobby. I try to tell people that all the time. This thing is at night for 15 minutes. What do you do when you wake up in the morning? Guys, come on. Face reality.
Thank you. You couldn't have said it better. I don't think I could have put it better as well.
Thank you, Riyaaz. I tried my very best.
In terms of the way forward for you and your future, of course, you said after post-COVID, you're going to get involved in a number of gigs, etc. What are some of your plans? While during COVID, there's been a lot of introspection with a lot of people. They've been sitting back and saying, okay, let me have a look at my life. This is where I am. This is where I'd like to be. Did you have such moments?
Nope, not one. When people were staying at home, lockdown. I've been doing lockdown for most of my life. I'm a recluse. I've stayed at home. I go to clubs and I'm back home by 9 p.m. And that's not even comedy club. That's going out with my friends. It's a place, like going out was never a thing for me. Yeah, you'll catch me out at my favorite local, maybe on a Friday night with friends playing cards. That's it. But if I go to a gig, I go do my slot and I'm back home. I've never been the person to go to parties and stuff. I had no introspection. That was those first 5 weeks of lockdown were normal to me. Really, really. Other than the fact I couldn't go to gym. That's it. So I didn't have any introspection. Yeah. I try to keep my cholesterol down. I mean, I'm trying for a long life. Looking forward to that long life thing. But I'm saying that it's like, so I didn't have any introspection like that. Also, I think the only thing I did consider was it would have been nice to be locked up with people other than my parents. I would have loved to have had a wife. It would have been a cool time. Hung out with her every day. Didn't have that. Don't have a wife. So I think if you have to ask me what I'm going to do post-COVID, in the words of Cat Stevens, find a girl, settle down. If you want, you can marry. Look at me. I am old, but I'm happy.
Wow. Great words indeed.
Would you have said that for any song that I quoted? Wow, great words indeed.
No, I wouldn't.
What if I did the lyrics to WAP? Would you have said the same thing?
No.
What if I did?
Lastly.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. What would you like to be remembered as? Funny guy?
No. Kind, empathetic, caring. That's it. Humor is not a condition of a successful human for me. Giving, charitable, God conscious, correct moral compass. Those are the type of qualities of a human being I think supersede any other form in art. Like being the funniest person in the room, that's okay. Being an incredibly handsome person like myself, it's okay. Those things fade. But I'm just like, you could be kind from the moment you're born till the moment you die, and you could have an effect on others more than other famous people would. In 30 years from now, maybe we won't remember Simmi. Be like, Simmi. Oh yeah, the guy that used to dance and stuff. And yeah, I used to paint his nails. But if you're a kind person, look at Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman from Gift of the Givers. That guy will be remembered for a long time.
Can't agree with you more. He's actually going to be one of my guests as well on this season, and amazing work.
Oh, that's great. Send his details this way. I'd also like to speak to him.
I will. Thank you so much, Simmi.
No worry, Riyaaz. This was great. It was nice and holistic.
Over the next couple of weeks, we feature a variety of guests who will help us find answers to questions we often think about but rarely ask on Thinking Out Loud. This is Riyaaz Safi saying thank you so much for listening. Till the next episode, bye for now.